everyone, and a very warm welcome to our conversation today. I hope you all have grabbed a cup of coffee for yourselves. Very excited for this conversation for two reasons, among many others. One is the topic itself, women on boards, and we've been working really hard for this program. And two, because I'm in conversation with a very special Aarti Madhusudan. So I'll start by just sharing a brief introduction about Aarti, and then we'll just get started. So Aarti is the founder of Governance Counts, an initiative which helps nonprofits build more effective boards. This includes identifying key board-related issues and recommending good practice guidelines. She has consulted several Indian and international organizations. Aarti is passionate about volunteering and runs Whiteboard, an I Volunteer initiative that brings senior corporate professionals together as a group to provide strategic guidance pro bono to nonprofits. She volunteers herself with Dan Utsav. Aarti is an alumna of TIS Mumbai and Nimans Bangalore. Very warm welcome to the conversation, Aarti.
Thank you, Priyanka. I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. My name is Priyanka. I work with the Indian School of Development Management, and I'm also a founding team member of the Women on Boards program. Very excited to be in conversation with Aarti. For all our participants, thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat box or the Q&A window to put your question down there, and we'll ensure we are able to answer your questions towards the end of this conversation. So let's get started, Aarti. I'll be throwing some questions at you and would love for you to answer. So your first question is, why are we talking about boards in the non-profit sector now?
So Priyanka, boards have existed as long as non-profits have existed in India, right? It's a legal requirement for a non-profit to have a board. But I think, the focus on boards is more relevant today, especially post-COVID, where there's been so much turbulence in the non-profit sector, right? There's been so much uncertainty in terms of support, in terms of organizations having to pivot, reinvent themselves, just respond to the context and so on. I think up until then, more or less boards would play a compliance role largely, but I think the pressure and the demand for boards to do a lot more has increased since then. So I think, just given the timing, given the context today, and given the uncertainty that nonprofits are having to grapple with, the role of boards has become extremely critical. So that's one. The second, very interestingly, and what's been very heartening, as you can see through the number of people who've even reached out to us in terms of interest in the program, is I think people have begun to realize that there is more to what they can do, and how can they bring that larger purposefulness, to their lives. And certainly serving on a board is one way to do that, because while you're not necessarily having to, be directly involved in the execution of solutions for social problems, I think it's an easier way to be part of the solution in some sense. So just trying to match the need and the hunger on the nonprofit side with the increased interest amongst people, society at large, to be more involved. I think the timing is therefore very pertinent now.
You did briefly answer my next question, but I would still ask, what roles can the boards play in today's scenario of the social sector?
So I think boards need to keep evolving to the needs of the organization and the context, Priyanka. I think a lot of us, in the sector have often lamented the status quo or of, the roles that boards play, right? And that's not at all to judge it as good or bad. It's just the way that it has been. So I think that the roles that the boards now can play is to really infuse a new thinking, new energy, just supporting the organization in the way that is needed, supporting the founder or the chief executive in the way that is needed, and really bring a whole host of talent to the sector at large. I suppose, like every other sector, the nonprofit sector has tended to be, has the scope to be far more diverse and inclusive, right? So I think this is a great opportunity for boards to rethink their whole role itself. And even if they may not have new people necessarily on the board, how can they start thinking about what they can do differently? How can they infuse newer perspectives and energy to the work that they are doing?
Yeah. Why do we believe that women are needed at the helm of this work?
So this comes from a place of deep bias and prejudice. I think women need to be at the helm of everything under the sun. I mean, look at what's happening around in the world, and all the problems that are being caused are largely by men, and that's meant in a very light way. But I think seriously though, the reason we are looking at women to be at the helm of this is there have been studies in other countries and in other contexts that have proven this, that a diverse group with women at the helm in leadership positions, does add to everything, right? Just in terms of outcomes, in terms of how those outcomes are achieved, and what goes into the thinking behind solutioning, right? And there's a lot of research to say that, without being stereotypical necessarily, that intuition that women bring, for example, right? If we can capture that in the decision-making process itself, it can only augur well for that decision. So that's one. The second, I think, and all of us will agree on this, is that women, I think, in general, are able to transpose experiences from one context to another a little bit more seamlessly and effortlessly, right? And so the opportunity, for somebody who gets onto the board to take that experience back to their own context, whether it is in their corporate lives, in other groups that they are associated with, the opportunity is enormous in that, right? And so the hope is that if we can have women in senior positions at board levels in the nonprofit sector, hopefully what they pick up from that experience, they'll be able to take it back to their own workplaces. And we'll therefore then create a far more empathetic and compassionate society at large.
So, like people attending this coffee chat today and others know that we're building this program together, Women on Boards, and I'm sure people are here to listen more about it. So, Aarti, walk us through the genesis of the program. How did this crazy idea come to your mind?
So, I'm trying to sort of be very serious about how we all thought about it. So there were no Excel sheets, there were no projections, there was no business plan, nothing that formed the genesis of this. It was a conversation and really serendipity and the universe conspiring for those of us who believe in stuff like that. I think that's what happened, honestly, Priyanka. So the first conversation I had was with Ravi at, who's a co-founder of ISDM. A couple of years ago, we were, talking about something else. We were together on another, initiative, and I was just saying to him that, look, I just, so strongly believe that we need more women from the corporate sector on nonprofit boards. And I think he jumped in and he said, yeah, that is something that nobody has done it so far in India. And how can we actually think about doing this more systematically, and how can we build institutional framework around it? 6 months later, just out of the blue, Neera, who is the co-founder of Dasra, we were chatting, and she said, I'm really keen to explore if we can do this. So, and it's amazing. The two of them had not spoken to each other at all before, right? So I just felt like this was a sign and a signal to now kick this off, and that really is the genesis. I just think aligning on this deep desire to involve more women. And the thing is, Priyanka, all these bright, wonderful women are out there. They're just out there. I was talking to somebody a few days ago who said, I've been so keen to explore something like this, but the opportunities don't seem to exist. And equally on the other side, and this, we did this survey with 100 nonprofit organizations before we launched the program. Every one of those organizations said yes to wanting a board member who is a woman on their boards. So I think it's just, the timing was right. I think people who believed in it just came together, and hopefully we'll create magic.
Yeah. No, definitely. And this brought back so many memories. I remember a couple of years back when you made the first presentation at ISDM about the program, and rest is history, really. Because last 8 months have gone in just days and nights.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
Absolutely.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah, completely agree. So that brings us to my to the next question. Tell us a little more, Aarti, about what has gone into the actual designing of the program, from the genesis to what we have today, and we're ready to build our cohort or announce it in a few weeks' time. We're sitting in March, and by end of March, we'll know our cohort, and April we'll be kicking off the program. So tell us a little more.
So I think, Priyanka, you know this, but we've done a lot of back and forth on, what should the curriculum look like, what should the design look like, what should we really, what should we really be bringing to the, participants and so on. Because see, the truth is, a lot of our participants are, are people with tons of experience in their roles, right? So, without really being superfluous on that, what is it that we can actually do? And we also spoke to a bunch of other people who are in the leadership space to try and see what is it that we can, how is it that we can add value to what is already, there in some form or fashion. So I think we sort of then concluded that we need to do three things, right? So the entire module will comprise three parts. And the first part is really the most critical, in my view, the most critical part. And, we spent so much time just thinking about it, which is an orientation of the social sector itself, right? India is huge. I mean, on record, there are 3 million non-profit organizations. So assume that, data lies or data is exaggerated. Even if you're talking of a small percentage, we have a humongous number of organizations in the non-profit sector, of whom a large percentage already want help. And the thing is that each of these organizations brings a very different approach to the solutions that they are providing to social problems. So what is this sector? What is this diversity we're talking about? Who are these people who are trying to change the world? What is their approach? Who is supporting them? What are the challenges that they're facing? So the entire gamut of all the variables that goes up to make this, chaos almost, right? Um, what is that, right? And how can we provide people a window into the sector at large? So that is the entire first module is centered around, people who hopefully will come in to really inspire everybody and, sort of throw people off their, expectations in some way. That's the first module. The second module, really, we're talking about the role of the board. And, we had a lot of debate, remember, on saying that, but there is so much information available on the role of the board. Many of our participants are likely to have been exposed to it in one way or another. So what is it that will be different? I think for us, the biggest learning has been, and, given my work for almost 2 decades in this, and some of our own experiences in DASRA and ISDM, that the role of the board in the nonprofit context is actually very, very different. A lot of it is beyond compliance, right? And it's unfair to compare the role of the board in the for-profit and non-profit sector. But I think the key differences would be, beyond compliance. What is it that boards can do and need to do in the non-profit sector, which go beyond compliance? What does governance actually encompass, right? So when, for example, you're saying that one of the things a non-profit board should be doing is to help the founder think through the strategic plan for the organization, what does that actually mean? And that will mean different things at different points in time. It will mean different things based on what the executing team needs at different points in time. So the kind of support that the board will play will need to keep evolving and be responsive. And really, governance is so much beyond just the compliance bit, which is of course something that all boards, irrespective of the sector, will need to do. I think the second module will also hopefully focus a little bit on what is the role of an advisory group, right? And I always refrain from calling it an advisory board, but would prefer to call it a council of advisors or an advisory council. And what role can that advisory council play? Right, and what is the relationship between the legal board and the advisory council? How can the advisory council be a place for the people on it as well as for the organization to try and test that relationship before they actually move on to the legal board, right? Plus the laws that govern the nonprofit sector, right? I mean, there are so many laws that apply to the nonprofit sector based on how the organization is actually registered. So what are those elements that will influence board response and board behavior? The third module is really about, how can we make all of this simple and easy? So what are the structures and processes that will enable governance to happen efficiently, right? What some of us might take for granted may not necessarily be a truism, right? How can we simple things like how do you communicate to a board? I mean, are you sending 30 pages that people are reading on the elevator up to the board meeting, or are you sending information in a way that is easily absorbed? So it's all the nuts and bolts pieces. And the fourth module, which the participants may not be a part of, but which I think we will definitely do, is really building founder preparedness, right, and organization preparedness. So because placement is a critical element in this journey, and we're hoping that all our 25, 30 members will get placed mid-year, how are we preparing the organizations to absorb the kind of talent that we will be bringing to them, right? And that's going to happen right before the placement. And finally, of course, which is my favorite piece, only because of the way it sounds, is the board buddy piece, right? So we're hoping that everyone who gets on board will have a buddy that they can reach out to in this journey, right? And I'm sure that we will learn. There will be a few bumps along the way, but we're hoping to make that a smoother journey if possible for people who come on. So I'm very excited by the board buddy idea, honestly, and I'm hoping that we can do that really well.
Yeah. Thank you, Aarti, for that detailed description of the modules, and it helps me revise all the things that we keep talking about every day as well.
Every day.
Aarti, do walk us through a little bit the pedagogy and how are we planning to deliver this for the participants, and what is the expectation from the participants in terms of their engagement with these modules and the entire program?
So, a lot of the pedagogy is going to come from hopefully conversations with people who have experience, Priyanka. There will be, sadly, we don't have theoretical frameworks for non-profit governance as much in India. But hopefully over the next few years, we'll build it in terms of what is relevant to us. A lot of the pedagogy that is available is it's contextualized to sectors that are way ahead of us in terms of their understanding of boards and governance. And I don't mean this in any judgmental way at all. I'm just saying that all the information that's available on the role of nonprofit boards comes from sectors where they've had these kinds of conversations and discussions for a much longer time than we have had as a sector. That's not to say individual organizations aren't talking about it. Of course they are. The second piece is, I think this is a great opportunity for us to look at elements of culture and chemistry. And as South Asians, both of these play a very, very important role in how we interact with one another, right? We're not transactional as a people. We're not, just kaam se kaam matlab rakho kind of people, right? And so how is it that we can incorporate nuances of culture and chemistry within the whole framework of, board behavior that we will create? So, of course, some of the pedagogy we've learned from, what's worked well in other parts of the world. And so we will use some of that. We will definitely, rely heavily on people who have been very successful, both in terms of, CEOs and founders in the nonprofit sector who've engaged their boards very well, as well as board members themselves, who've brought a lot to the table, just given their experience of having done it. Right? Because, I mean, you can state all the expectations up front, you can sign off on everything, but it is still a learning process. It's like marriage. Right? So you just have to keep discovering each other, up to a point where you settle down in a comfortable equilibrium, and hopefully we'll enable that through the journey. I think that therefore, this is an opportunity for us to co-create in some ways some parts of the pedagogy for India and for hopefully South Asia itself.
Great. If I could just add a few things around the pedagogy, so or the delivery model, actually. So the first two are virtual, where people can attend from their own spaces, but live, because we're trying to build a very tiny, intimate cohort, and everybody really learns from each other and with each other. And we are trying to make the third module really special, where we bring everyone together live, either Delhi or Bombay, and the entire cohort comes together for the first time at that point. And there is going to be a lot of immersion and work happening in between modules as well, a lot of learning out there. So great, Aarti. A difficult question now. Who is this program best suited for?
So, well, it would have been difficult 6 months ago, Priyanka, when we were having all those discussions and debates, but I think I have an easier answer now for it. So essentially, we're looking, and this is really based on what the nonprofits asked, right, and what they sort of told us in that survey that we did. So this is essentially for anybody who has corporate experience of at least 13 to 15 years, breaks notwithstanding, so, including all of that. And people who are in positions of leadership or influence in their own context. Very simply, it is for women who bring in that. So that's the sort of the basic criteria. Additionally, and although this is something that we will discover as we talk more to the applicants and participants, is just this intent and desire to serve on nonprofit boards, right? To get on. I mean, that's definitely that's a very critical criteria. That the desire to get onto a board at the end of this program needs to be very. It's almost required. So I think these are two, I would say, basic criteria to apply for the program. And of course, the application form, I think people who filled it will know, asks for a lot of other aspects. But desire to learn, desire to serve, desire to give back, and share the skills that people have acquired in their own journeys. I think that's who this is for.
Fantastic. One last question from me, Aarti, and I see that there are a couple of questions already from the participants. So we'll jump on to them very soon. My question to you is, who are the type of people or the faculty we are hoping to invite to engage with our participants?
Yeah, so I'd be very happy to share the profiles and the types of people, Priyanka, because till we have their official OKs, it wouldn't be fair to sort of share the names. But I think we'll have a really, we're hoping to get a really good mix of people, right? So one, there will be people who are fairly senior from the corporate sector, who've had excellent experiences with their boards and also not so excellent experiences, because I believe that we learn as much from failure as we do from success. So one profile will be that. The other profile will be other women like the participants who we have, who've been through this journey in some way, right? So who have been on boards of nonprofits, and how has that journey been for them? What have they enjoyed about it? What have they struggled with? That kind of thing. And I think lastly, it will be from actual founders of nonprofit organizations who are seeking this kind of support, right? So it'll be a mix of people from the nonprofit and the for-profit sector, but hopefully people who have experience on either side to deliver some aspects of the modules.
Great, thank you, Aarti. So there are a couple of questions from Aparna, and while we respond to them, I request other participants to jot down their questions if you have any. So Aparna asks, programs for for-profit board members tend to be oriented heavily to financials. This program does not have that element. Why is that so?
So it will have an element on compliance, which will talk a little bit about financial diligence and the requirements that nonprofits need to subscribe to. But it won't have an entire session just on finance alone. So it will get covered in the second module under compliance, and it will be a fairly critical element in that module. And we will have somebody who is considered expert to deliver that way.
Great, thanks, Aarti. The next question is, will the modules be full day sessions? How many days at a time?
So the modules are expected to be a full day session on 2 days. That's Friday, Saturday, or in April, a Friday, Saturday in May, and one Friday, Saturday in June, which hopefully will be offline. They will be full day sessions from morning to evening with, of course, good breaks for lunch and refreshments and all of that. So.
What is the estimate time or effort one would need to invest in between the sessions? In between modules I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so I think it will be an average of 8 to 10 hours between the sessions at a minimum. It won't be less than that, I can tell you that.
Great. So that really answers the questions our participants had as of now. Okay, there's something in chat.
It's,
Is
Vijay
this
is asking,
only?
this is on,
Yeah.
this is for any organized. I mean, so the program is not for people who are in NGOs. It's the program. The participants will all be from professional slash corporate sector. The recipient organizations can be, I mean, anybody who wants to have such a profile on their boards. We've already got a bunch of people who have responded saying that they would like, and they're not all women-headed organizations at all.
There are a couple of more questions, Aarti. Will there be any scholarships for the fee?
As of now, no. We're not looking at bursaries or scholarships as of now, no.
There's another, which is what time commitment is expected from a woman on the board?
So this is a question that I often hesitate to give a quantitative number to. I'll tell you why. Because I have found that if the engagement is good, then board members tend to give more time that even they would have committed to, right? But on average, I would think, in a good board, if the board members engage well, if there's clarity on what she's bringing to the table, it would anywhere be between 4 to 6 hours a month. And this also, this will include email, phone discussions, reading stuff and so on. So at a minimum, it will be 4 to 6 hours a month. But I can tell you this from experience that, an engaged board member will wind up without even their knowledge giving a lot more time. And we're hoping that that is what will happen.
I think the participants want to know a little more about the post-program mentoring from you.
Yeah. So what we're anticipating is that once the placement is over, and we will obviously, that will be through dialogue. We're not just going to plug and play a place. Once the placement is over, we are hoping to identify a few existing board members, and they may or may not all be women, who will be available to you in that journey. That as you start engaging on the board within an organization, there will be there'll be people who you can reach out to and say, hey, I'm getting stuck with this decision. Is my response as a board member to this particular situation optimal or not? So it will be on a ask as you need basis, but we're hoping to have a few people who will be available to the cohort, and hopefully in the next cohort you can be that person.
Yes. Aarti, there's another question. You say that you will be able to assist in placement. What kind of placement is it? Paid, unpaid, full-time, or part-time?
So the placement on a board is always unpaid. Okay, board members in the non-profit sector do not get paid, unlike in the corporate sector where they receive, I think, a sitting fee. So this is completely pro bono. It is people volunteering their time to be on the board of an organization, of a non-profit organization, so of an NGO, or in a rare case there may be a social enterprise, but the role of the board member is an unpaid one.
Yeah. And I think the parts of the questions are also about part-time, full-time. So this is definitely part-time because it's a board role.
Correct. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a part-time. Yeah.
Just a few hours a month or something.
Yeah.
I think it'll also be useful if you can share briefly about the applicant journey. So currently, as everyone knows, we're in the application process and our deadline is next Sunday, 13th of March. And we've received a beautiful response from people, and it's heartwarming to see, one, very encouraging for us, and two, to see that there's so many people who are interested. But what happens after the application until we announce our cohort and post? Would love for you to share a little bit about that as well.
Yeah. So Priyanka, jump in here because I know you've been working much more closely on this than I have. So I will, I'll take a stab at it. So once the applications have been completed and submitted, so if some of you haven't done that, please do that. We will, basis the first few criteria that I said were required, to be eligible for this program. Once we've shortlisted at our end, we will set up conversations for you with a bunch of people who are, who have the experience of either being on boards or working with board members, potential board members like yourself. So those conversations will essentially be to just gauge your interest and your commitment, and two, for you to ask any questions of them about what it will be like to be a board member. So that's sort of the second step. We're hoping that that second step will not lead to any sort of eliminations per se. The third step, I think, between that and with the cohort starting, we're hoping to engage you with uh, just information, interesting articles around the journey, around boards, their roles, and so on. And we kick it off on the 14th of April.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Aarti. There is another question from Shekhar. What about the travel cost reimbursement for board members, if any?
For board members, where? For the program or in general?
Shekhar, could you help us clarify the question? What about the travel cost reimbursement? I'm assuming this is traveling to the organization
in general. So yeah, so that really depends, on the organization. Many organizations I know, many board members I know do not seek travel reimbursement at all. Some do, depending on, and so it's a case by case thing. There is no, I mean, there's no mandated requirement that they have to be reimbursed, or that they should not be reimbursed. Some organizations, if they have the budgets for it, will reimburse. Many won't, and board members will make the effort to be present for those meetings, by themselves.
Radha has an interesting question. What will be the role of ISDM in this marriage?
Yes, ISDM should answer.
So Radha, like Aarti mentioned in the beginning, the genesis of this program was just these three brains from Dasra, ISDM, and Aarti herself came together. I think that's been the primary role. But ISDM is incubating the program. All of us are working together to build it. Many people from ISDM are playing role on the panel, putting the structures in place, making it a beautiful learning experience for all of us. Yeah, I mean, that's partly the role of all the three organizations in the program. I think a key role will also be leveraging and taking help from our faculty members who are part of the larger ISDM ecosystem, who come and participate in the PGP program, people who will be mentors for our cohort. So those are some of the things that ISDM hopes to do for this.
And a big vision. We want to get 100 women by 2023. So that's right. Our big vision. So and hopefully, we'll reach out to all of you for help to achieve that vision. So
yeah, and this idea, the whole program is very close to ISDM's heart. Fits in really well with the larger vision that we have, the things that we're doing. So and we hope to do many cohorts of it, and it in no way I think will stop at 100. I'm pretty confident we'll bring a program maybe for men. A lot of people are asking. Maybe for women who are primarily from the social sector. So I'm sure there are going to be many different combinations. There is one more question. What if I'm unable to attend a particular day of the 6-day module due to work conflicts?
So we're really hoping that you don't have the conflict, at all, because I think the program is designed in very tight capsules. So every day, will be sort of critical for you to attend. I think there will be recordings, Priyanka. I think we will have, recordings of the sessions, but yes. I really feel it will take away from the experience, because a lot of the models are going to be interactive in nature. It's not going to be a delivery of, some gyan. And therefore, I would really urge you to sort of not have to work conflict. Priyanka, I can write to your colleagues or your boss at work if need be.
Also, we're trying to share. Yeah, we're trying to share the schedule very well in advance. The dates are already up on the website. So you can actually book your dates, etc. once you have the offer to join the program, which is a little later in March. And so you'll be able to book book your days in advance, and hopefully, like Aarti said, there shouldn't be conflicts. For all the participants today who joined us a little later, we'll be sharing the recording of this entire coffee chat. So you can just go back, play, and see if you've missed out on any questions that you had.
And you can always write to us at the email ID that you probably already have. If you have any further follow-up
I'll drop it in the
questions.
chat box as well.
Yeah. Or the WhatsApp number also, Priyanka, maybe that will be helpful.
Would do. Any other questions? Otherwise, we're good to go. Okay, I'll wait for a couple of seconds. Aarti, if there's anything else that you'd like to share from your end for people, just to make a decision about the program or anything else at all.
No, I think, not because we put it together and we've really sort of, worked hard at it, but please do share this with other women that you know. I can't say this enough. I just believe that we just need more and more women to be in positions of leadership everywhere, everywhere. So, if you can just spread the word, get more women to apply, it would be really, really, really good. So.
There are more questions. There are more questions, Aarti. So a question from Hutoxi. She says, will there be any exposure to CSR foundations, committees, etc.?
Sorry, will there be what?
Any exposure to CSR foundations or committees?
In the board program, no. We haven't planned for CSR related stuff, but I suspect there'll be one or two people in the cohort who will have CSR experience, who you could certainly have a chat with.
I hope that answers your question. There's another question from Radha. Okay, her question was related to the process of matching the NGO to the woman board seat seeker. I think when she asked about ISDM's role in this marriage, she was talking about the process of matching the NGO to the participant.
Yeah, so I think we do have, a fair idea of the organizations that have sought board members, and obviously we want to make the match in a way that will align with every participant's interest as well. So it will not be that we will just place you in an organization straight away. There will be a conversation to say, okay, these are 2 or 3 organizations that are interested based on what causes you align with. Hopefully you can have a conversation with the people in the organization, and then we will do the placement. So it won't be as simple as just making the introduction and leaving you there. There'll be a lot of hand holding that will happen.
Yeah. So Rani asks, what about the in-person part of the program in case of COVID?
No COVID, COVID is gone.
And in case, God forbid, there is any such situation, we'll take a call at that time. But we're really keeping our fingers crossed and would really want everyone to come together at least once.
Correct, yeah.
So Shunali asks, how long is the usual board tenure for? Is it 3 years? Is there a peer-to-peer sharing that you will organize as we go into these roles?
Yeah, so, an ideal board tenure should be 3 to 5 years, but there is no standard, let me put it that way, in the sector, universal standard in the sector that is followed. There are boards where, the members have stayed on for like 10, 15 years. And we're realizing more and more as we do work in this space that, while tenure is a critical element in determining the robustness of the board in terms of diversity, it's not the only necessary requirement. So a lot of organizations tend to play it by ear, Shanali. So they will tend to look at the contributions that the board is making, and if that is optimal, and if everyone is sort of pleased with the way the board is contributing to the organization, both at the board level and the organization level, then the tenure in terms of number of years, just in the context of what is the right number of years, tends to take a backseat. Sorry, it is a long and complicated answer, but I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. Aparna also has a concern that our program is happening during a long weekend around Good Friday. So we should probably, once the cohort is finalized, Aarti, maybe look at the dates or earlier. But
We
yeah,
could, and that in a way that's good news because there'll be no official demands on people.
correct. And it's virtual, so one can take it from wherever they are.
Yeah.
So Rani asks, do you follow a due diligence check of the organizations that you find for the participants?
Yes, so there will be a due diligence that we will do at our end, and we can share what that due diligence is. It'll be fairly simple and straightforward. And of course, as you decide to pick the organization you want to be on the board of, you're welcome to do your own diligence as well. But at our level, we will certainly do the diligence and bring only those organizations to you that make the cut.
Okay, thanks, Aarti. I do not see any other questions in the chat box. Oh,
Are
yes,
there
there is.
any?
Are there any regulatory requirements to be on the board of nonprofits?
So there are. So for the legal board, to get onto the legal board, there is a bunch of things, but we are hoping that you'll start off by being on the advisory board because every organization, depending on how it is structured. So if it's a society, there'll be a certain bunch of things that need to be done. If it's a trust, there'll be different things. And if it's a company, Section 8 company, there'll be a different set of requirements that will need to be fulfilled. So there will be, and there will be a session again. The compliance session will talk about some of those requirements in terms of what will be needed at your end to get onto the legal board. Again, if you're already working in a multinational or a company, then I'm assuming that there will be certain checks and balances that your company will need, or you will need to check back with your company on if you're joining the legal board. However, if you're joining as an advisor, I think that's reduced greatly unless you're joining an organization which has similar work interests, and that's extremely unlikely to happen. So we've rarely found companies worried about advisory positions. In fact, a lot of them I think will encourage it because they also see it as good experience for their colleagues, especially if they're looking at some of you as going on the trajectory of getting onto a board. So yeah, Shekhar, so your question on the role, responsibility, liability, again, that will differ from the type of, registration to registration. And, one you can, and I will send you the website of an organization that has a lot of information on this as well soon after the call. So regarding clearing, Aparna's question, Priyanka, I can't read the whole thing.
Okay. She says, will ISDM train the cohort regarding clearing the exam for wannabe directors as would now be a government mandate?
For non-profits, I don't think this is a mandate by the government. I think maybe for-profit companies it is mandated, but I don't think for non-profit board, for legal board, I mean for advisory board members, there is nothing.
With reference be contacted after offer has been sent or before as part of the selection process? Priyanka is asking about the reference, Aarti. Will they be contacted after the offer has been sent or before as part of the process?
I think we're thinking before. It
That's
will
right.
be before yeah.
What should the NGO expect the board member to bring to the table?
So a bunch of things, and hopefully at the end of this program there'll be far more clarity and acceptance of that. But it will essentially mean two or three very broad things, right? One is just ensuring that the organization is able to drive towards its mission as has been intended or as has been planned. That's at a very broad level. Participating in, just creating strategic alliances. So it's not, hopefully the role of the board will not be limited to giving advice at some 30,000 feet, but really giving advice in the context of what the organization can actually implement and execute on the ground. And lastly, sharing the dream and the vision. I think that is the most critical element in any board. Honestly, right? It doesn't have to be a non-profit board. And if board members feel that they are what I call vision sharers or dream sharers, then then anything is possible.
Great. Thank you, Aarti. Any other questions? I really am enjoying this. Such an engaged group of people. I don't see any other questions. We're also at 6:46. So if there are any last few things that you would like to share with our participants today, and I see many people who've already either started their applications or even finished. So I'm so glad we're all together having this conversation. So anything, Aarti, that you'd like to share before we close out for the evening?
No, I mean, I'm just really excited for this program, Priyanka. One, because like I said right at the beginning, I just think we need more and more and more women in positions of influence. And the thing is, they're out there. We don't have to, try very hard to find them. They exist, right? So I would say that, just look forward to a wonderful experience. And we're really, really keen to get it right with the first cohort. And, so we will rely heavily on some of you to help us, you give us feedback, co-design some elements as we go along. We are doing it for the first time. And in all humility, I want to share that we're putting it together with the best intentions and hopes at heart. It's likely that we will make a few errors, hopefully none, but there will be a few. So we'd like to treat you as peer almost, right? Because while we've done the first part of the thinking, how this will all shape up will really be, dependent on how you guys engage and the inputs and insights that you bring. So a lot of pressure in that sense on the first cohort, and hopefully we create a model, for the sector at large, and we'll achieve our collective. I'm hoping that you share our dream of getting 100 women in the next year onto the, into the sector. So that's it. So if you haven't completed your form, please fill it. If you can share it with a bunch of people like yourselves, please do. And yeah, look forward to seeing many of you very soon.
Thank you so much, Aarti, and once again for sharing your insights, how our journey has been so far, and all that we look forward to. Thank you, Rani, for sharing our dream to the top 100 dream. Thank you so much, and really looking forward to meeting many of you, like Aarti said. Our application deadline is 13th of March. If you have any questions, please do reach out to us. We are very happy to answer, support you through the application process. And once again, have a great weekend. Good night to all of you.
Good night. Thank you, everybody, and bye. Yeah, bye.
Thank you.